Okay, now we're moving on. We're still in Unit 1, which is all about how molecules come together to form living things. And so the second video, we're going to talk more in depth about that last macromolecule that I mentioned in the previous video, the nucleic acids. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay. Remember we talked about the four macromolecules: proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, and nucleic acids. And so we're going to go into a little bit more in depth into nucleic acids, because nucleic acids are needed in order for our body to make proteins. And so remember I said how important proteins were and how we need proteins in order to do so many different things in the body. So DNA and RNA are necessary for the production of proteins. And so we'll get into that in the third video, but first let's just talk about DNA and RNA. So you see here that DNA here on the left and RNA on the right. DNA is an abbreviation for deoxyribonucleic acid. And so RNA is just ribonucleic acid. And so let's look at some of the differences. DNA is a double-stranded, and this is called a helix. It looks like a spiral staircase. So it's a double-stranded helix, so it looks like a spiral staircase. And the ribbons going down the sides here, the blue ribbon looking structure, which would also be like the rails of the staircase. These are your sugar and your phosphate groups that make up DNA. And then the bars that connect the two ribbons, which kind of look like your steps, if you're thinking about a spiral staircase, they look like the steps, are your nitrogenous bases. And so if you'll recall the structure of a nucleic acid, let's look up here. You see how you've got your sugar and your phosphate groups over here, and then you have your nitrogenous base here. So that's what it looks like. So your sugar and your phosphate are these blue ribbon structures, and then your nitrogenous bases are these structures in the middle that connect the ribbons. Okay. So you've got a 5-carbon sugar. This is the chemical structure of your sugar. And then these are your nitrogenous bases. And there are 5 different nitrogenous bases, also called nucleobases. But there's one of them, the first one is thymine, and we use the capital letter T to denote thymine. And then you've got cytosine, and we use a capital C, guanine, capital G, adenine, capital A, and then uracil, the capital U. And you'll notice that both DNA and RNA have cytosine, guanine, and adenine, but only DNA has thymine and only RNA has uracil. So for the RNA, the main difference is that RNA, instead of being a double-stranded helix, it is just a single strand. So again, this blue ribbon-shaped structure is your single-stranded sugar and phosphate groups, and then the little bars sticking off are your nitrogenous bases or your nucleobases. Okay, so let's go over that again in this chart, and I recommend you take notes on your paper as I fill in this chart. So the first thing is where are they found? So DNA is in the nucleus of all of your cells. So every single cell in your body has a nucleus, and inside the nucleus is where your DNA is. And your DNA is exactly the same in every single one of your hundreds of thousands of millions of cells in your body. The DNA does not leave the nucleus. It never leaves the nucleus. So it is inside the nucleus, but the RNA goes out of the nucleus to the cytoplasm. So RNA is made in the nucleus. Let me add that information. Sorry about that. So RNA is made in the nucleus, but leaves the nucleus to go out to the cytoplasm. Okay. But the DNA never leaves the nucleus. You can think of it, DNA is your blueprint or your instructions for how to make all of the proteins in your body. And so it's very, very important, and it has to be protected. So it stays inside the nucleus where it is protected. So what is the function? Well, DNA is for the storage of your genetic information. All the information that makes you who you are, or any living organism, even bacteria have DNA, and animals and plants. So it's all of the genetic information that's passed down from the parent to the offspring. And it's the information that makes that organism do the things that it does in life. RNA controls the expression of the genetic information. So the DNA stores the information, but in order for that genetic information to get out of the nucleus and go into the cell and tell the cell what to do according to those instructions, that's where RNA comes in. And so DNA has the information, it stores it, keeps it safe, and then RNA takes it out of the nucleus to where it can do what it's supposed to do. Okay. And so for DNA is a double-stranded helix for its structure. And then RNA is just a single strand. So DNA, they both have a 5-carbon sugar. So here's your sugar in DNA. It's called deoxyribose sugar. And then here's your sugar in RNA. It's called ribose sugar. So the sugar in DNA is deoxyribose, and the sugar in RNA is ribose. Deoxyribose and ribose. Okay. So the bases, or the nitrogenous bases, nucleobases is what sometimes they're called, for DNA. So if you look up here, you'll see that DNA has cytosine, guanine, and adenine, and it also has thymine. So DNA has cytosine, guanine, adenine, and thymine. And so we use abbreviations for these. So cytosine, we use a capital C. For guanine, we use a capital G. For adenine, we use a capital A, and then for thymine, we use a capital T. Okay, and now the bases for RNA, as you see up here, RNA has the same 3 bases that DNA has, cytosine, guanine, and adenine, but RNA doesn't have thymine. Instead, RNA has uracil. So RNA has cytosine, capital C, guanine, capital G, adenine, capital A, and instead of thymine, it has uracil. Okay, and so if you'll look at this structure up here, you'll see in the DNA, you've got 2 different colors on each one of these base pairs. Okay, and that's because in the nitrogenous bases or the nucleobases, they come in pairs in your DNA. And so they always pair up the same way. It's called a complementary base pairing rule. So when DNA is making a copy of itself, it always follows the complementary base pairing rule for replication. And so DNA making a copy of itself is called replication. So when DNA makes a copy of itself, it splits in half. So right down the center here, where these 2 colors come together, the DNA separates and it unzips kind of like a zipper and comes apart. And as it comes apart, it makes a copy. And so everywhere there is an adenine, there will be a thymine, and everywhere there's a cytosine, there will be a guanine. So to help you remember that, remember apple in the tree, adenine goes with thymine, and car in the garage, cytosine goes with guanine. Okay, but when we look over here at RNA, we have a little bit different base pairing rule. So what happens with RNA is the DNA makes the RNA. Okay, so the DNA code tells the RNA which nitrogenous base goes next on the RNA strand. Okay, so this is called transcription when DNA makes RNA. And since RNA doesn't have thymine, instead of adenine going with thymine, adenine goes with uracil when DNA is changing to RNA, and cytosine still goes with guanine. And then also, just to add here, since DNA has thymine, you still will have a thymine, and thymine goes to adenine, just like it does when DNA to DNA. So with DNA, adenine goes to thymine, cytosine goes to guanine. So every time that your cell makes a copy of itself, it has to copy the DNA. So every time the DNA is copied, that's called replication. And when that happens, the DNA splits apart down the middle, and everywhere there's an adenine, there'll be a thymine connected to it, and everywhere there's a thymine, there'll be an adenine connected to it. And everywhere there's a cytosine, there'll be a guanine, and everywhere there's a guanine, there'll be a cytosine. Okay. And then RNA, when RNA is involved, you just don't have any thymine. So you still can have adenine, but instead of it going to thymine, it goes to uracil. And you can still have cytosine, which goes with guanine, and you can still have guanine going to cytosine, both directions there. And you still can have the thymine in your DNA, but you can't have thymine in your RNA. So thymine would go to adenine just the same way it does over here, but adenine would go to uracil. So that's the only difference in the base pairing. Okay, so that is DNA and RNA, an overview. And so on our next video, we will go into protein synthesis, and we'll see how DNA uses RNA to make the proteins that our body needs.